Boker Tov, Shavua Tov to everyone. Today's Daf is Daf Chof Dalit in Baba Kamas. We learn again for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Summa Tzar V'Shipi. Let's start with the Mishnah at the bottom of Chaf Gimel Beis. Famous Mishnah. Every kid learns this. Ezo Tam Beis Muad. What's a tam? What's an animal that's a tam? That's simple. Then what's a muad? A muad, we know a tam pays chatzin ezek. With Karen, and if he does damage in an unnormal fashion, he does something that he's not supposed to do. He pays chatzin. He pays only half the first three times. We said that's a knas. And there's a muad. Once he's done three times, on the fourth time, and that's important. On the fourth time, once he's done the fourth time, he pays the full amount. So what's the definition of ezu tam and how do we define them? If they warned him 3 days, notice the word days, 3 days in court, 3 days. That's what Tanakama says. The tam is a tam is if he had an opportunity to gore or to do something unusual, the same thing that he's done before, for 3 days, and there was testimony on 3 different days that he didn't do it anymore, then he reverts to become a tam again. So even if he's a mu'id, it's not mu'id forever. But it's not so simple. You have to have testimony. Just like there's 3 times testimony that made him into a mu'ed, you need 3 times testimony that took him back from being a mu'ed tam. That's Rav Yehuda's job. That's what Rav Yehuda learns. So a tam is if they testified him on 3 different days, and to go back, he needs testimony for 3 more days. Rav Meir, we'll see what the halach is. Rav Meir Omer, no, 3 times. 3 times. In other words, that the animal did the act on 3 times. What does that mean? It doesn't have to be that the testimony has to be on 3 different days. It could be on the same day, but that the animal did it on 3 different days. That he was a mu'ed, that he gored, or 3 times. Could be that the animal gored 3 times, right after one after another. At 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 3 o'clock, and there was testimony about those 3 times. What's a tam? If children play with the animal, subsequent to him becoming a mu'ed, and he's defined as a mu'ed, now the owner would have to pay nesek sholem. If he plays with kids and he doesn't gore them, that's enough that takes him back. He doesn't need 3 times or 3 days. Just if he plays with kids and he doesn't bother them, he doesn't gore them, that's good enough. Now we'll see what the halach is. Now, what's the reason for Rav Yehuda? My time, Rav Yehuda. What's Rav Yehuda's reasoning? Why he says 3 different days? Rabbi, the pasuk says, we have in the parsha of Nezikin that we've been talking about, of Shor, Bor, Mav, and Hever, the pasuk says in pasuk Chavtes and Per Chavav, Im Shor Nagachu Mitmol Shilshom, from the day before yesterday. So Rav Yehuda Dashan, Tmol is 1 day, Mitmol is 2 days, Shilshom is 3 days. So if he gored on 3 different days and there's testimony and the owner doesn't guard him, also the Gichar Abias, and if he doesn't, if his owner doesn't guard him, then on the 4th time he has to pay nesek sholem. Rava Amar, Rava says, Tmol mitmol, that's 1 day. Shilshom is trey, that's 2 days ago. And if he doesn't guard him now, what does that mean? Let's say I'm going to explain the shot really should be and now he doesn't guard him again on the 3rd time, then he's chayav. Now Rashi says here in the last Rashi, a very difficult Rashi. Rashi says, so Rashi learns in Rava that Rava's saying that if he doesn't guard him the 3rd time, it doesn't guard him after 2 times, on the 3rd time he's already chayav nesek sholem. But that's not really the case. It's the 4th time he has to pay nesek sholem. The first 3 times he doesn't have to pay. So this looks like a machlok is a baya Rava. Is this one of the cases where he passed like a baya? Tosfos points out, no. Rashi is mistaken, and Rashi himself chazarbo. Rashi 2 lines from the bottom of the page in Tosfos. Rashi asma chazarbo, because we have a favorite Gemara that talks about the 4th time. Rashi throughout this daf, and then on today's daf, Chaf Dalet, seems to also mention the 3rd time, but it's not the case because it's really the 4th time. As we see, the favorite Gemara talks about the 4th time, and Rashi himself was chazarbo. So what then the difference between Abai and Rava? Like Tosfos says, mashmos darshanik, just how you darshan the words. Do you say Tmol is 1, Mitmol is 2, and Shilshom is 3? Or do you say Mitmol is 1, Shilshom is 2, and V'leishmer is the 3rd time, but you really only chayiv on the 4th time. In other words, the first 3 times that the animal gores, he pays chatzin ezek. Gores, we're talking about when he gores. We're not talking about regel or shane, which is a mu'ed lechatchila in only chayiv in the chatzar and izek. We're talking about when the animal does something abnormal, and he's high at both Rishus Rab and Rishus Yachid. Oh, so does that be? Oh, so that's the issue over here. That's the issue over here. Rav Meir says 3 times. Doesn't have to be subsequent dates, apparently, right? Rav Meir says 3 times. 3 times, even doesn't have to be subsequent dates. According to Rav Yehuda says 3 different days. But are we talking about the animal goring on 3 days, or are we talking about testimony in court on 3 different days? We're going to get to that in a few minutes. But the Pashut Shas Rav Yehuda says 3 different days, and Rav Meir says no, even 3 times. Now, Rav Meir, my time. What's Rav Meir's reason? The last few words on the page in the Gemara. Rav Meir, my time. What's his reason? Tanya, Rav Meir. Listen, you can look at it 2 ways. If an animal gored on 3 different days, then as he scored 1, 2, 3, if he's chayav there, if he's such a wild animal, such an untamed animal that he does it in one day, one after another, that's even worse. That's one way of looking at it. Now, obviously, Rav Yehuda doesn't hold that way. It's got to be 3 different days. And we'll talk about it. It'd be 3 different days, la halacha, 3 different days scoring, or 3 different days testimony in court. You have to come to court and testify against the owner of this animal with the animal. Now, if the animal has no owner, so just take the animal. What are you going to do? There's nobody to sue. Talking about when you're suing the animal's owner, and in fact also you're collecting from the animal in the first 3 times because it's chazin as he. But what's Rav Meir's for? So listen, if he gored on 3 different days, that's considered a wild animal, a mu'eh, right? A damaging animal. So if you gored 3 times in one day, even more so, you could look at it the other way around too. You could say maybe he just had a bad day, but maybe he's okay normally, right? You could say, oh, one day he went crazy, but if several days passed, then he didn't. So you could look at it the other way. Amrulay. So they said to Rav Meir, you can't prove anything. If he gored on 3 different days, that's bad. So certainly if he gored on the same day, it's bad. Amrulay, look at a zava. Now, a zava is a woman who had dam 3 days in a row during the 11-day cycle between Nida and Nida. Minotaur, it's not like we keep today. A woman's a Nida for 7 days. We've learned this many, many times. And then there's an 11-day cycle in which if she sees dam 3 days in a row, she's a zava. Now, a woman is a zava only if she sees 3 days in a row. If she gushed one day, the whole day she was gushing, and the other 2 days she didn't see anything, nothing. She's only going. Okay, so Amrulay Zava Zava. If she saw a drop 3 days in a row, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then she's a full Zava, and she has to keep Zayin Nikim like we do today. Today we keep Zayin Nikim because it's a suffix if she's a Zava or Nida. So we go L'chumra and we keep Zayin Nikim. Amrulay Zava if she saw them far apart, meaning 3 days, she's Tameya. Torah, and yet if she saw all day, one day, she's had several sightings on one day, she's Torah. So don't prove anything. Can't say if you gored 3 days in a row, that's bad. So certainly if you gored 3 times in one day, look at the case of a Zava. If she saw 3 days in a row, then she's Tameh. If she saw 3 sightings or more or gushed all day in one day, she's Torah. Amalahen, that's different. The pasuk says, now that's by a woman. A man, a Zav, who has like a gonorrheic attack, the gonorrheic emission from his aver. So there it goes by, even if he had 3 sightings in one day, he's a full Zav. Full Zav, and he has to keep, man also has to keep Zayin Nikiyim, can't go to the Beis Mikdash, Shitaris, etc., and bring a carbon. If he saw 3, if he saw 2, it's Zayin Nikiyim without the carbon. But the issue is that the man goes by sightings, not by days. So he says, by the man it says, his Thomas depends on his emissions, on what runs out of him. Talakosov has a Zav Barios. When it comes to the man, it depends on how many sightings he had. That's a Zav B'yomim, because only the man is by sightings. That means by Zava, it's by days, right? So don't ask me a kasha from Zav. There, the pasuk is telling you that a Zav is based on sightings, and a Zava pays in days. So the Gemara says, how do you know the Zos excludes? Zos is like an exclusion, like Zed, nothing else. I know Zos excludes Zava from sightings, that if she saw 3 times in one day, she wouldn't be a full Zava. Maybe it's coming to exclude a Zav from Yama. Maybe it's only to say a Zav only depends on sightings, not days. The truth is that a Zav, the halacha makes him if he saw 3 sightings on one day or 3 sightings on 3 consecutive days, he is a Zav. But maybe that's what it's coming to exclude, that a Zav doesn't depend on days, only on sightings, and that's not the case. I'm going to the pasuk says, we compare Zachar Nekeva, male and female. Makus Zachar Nekeva, we compare male to a female. Manekeva Yom, just like if a woman sees on 3 consecutive days, she's a Zava. Av Zachar B'Yom, a man also, if he sees on 3 days, he's a Zav. So Lakish Nekeva Zachar. So that's the case. Say the same thing in reverse. Just like a Zachar, Ma Zachar B'Rios, just like a Zachar is a Zav, full Zav, if he saw 3 sightings even on 1 day or in 1 hour. Af Nekeva also B'Rios. Maybe a woman should also be a Zav if she saw 3 sightings on 1 day or Gush all day. Well, Hamiyat Rahman of Zos, we have an exclusion. The Zos says the Zos, only the man has B'Rios, not the woman. Umar Isa. So how do you know which one to exclude? How do you know that the Zos excludes a woman from Re'ios? It depends only on days. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the woman is a Zava on sightings alone, just like a man, and but the man doesn't depend on days at all. Right? Umari so Mastavra Koi Berios Mabrios. If we're talking the pasuk Zos Tia Tomaso Bizovo, that means when it runs out of him, when he exudes this liquid. Mastava Koi Berios is secretion. If we're talking about rios or secretions, is probably excluding secretions. So we're talking about the man has 3 secretions, he's a Zav. Whereas a woman's secretions don't count. It depends on days. So probably why? Because if you're talking about secretions, you're excluding other secretions. The man's secretions count, 3 secretions count for a Zav, whereas a woman's secretions don't count. She needs days. So he says, Koi Berios, my rios. Koi Berios, my yamim. If you're talking about rios, why would you exclude days? So therefore, we're not excluding days. We're saying when it says v'zos tia tamas v'zafa, we're saying that a man depends on his secretions, whereas a woman doesn't depend on secretions. It counts on days. Whereas a man also is counted for days. So that's the argument back and forth. But the point is, Rav Meir's svara was, if you saw on 3, if he gored on 3 different days, he's chayiv. Certainly, if he gored on 1 day. So therefore, that's why he says pamit. Now, what's the halacha? We'll see now. Tan Rabbanan. Ezo Mued, what's the Mued of Bryce? Let's call Shida Bashlosh Yomim, 3 days. That's like who? Rav Yehuda. The Tam Shiu, Terakas Mashbishin Bob, and Gechter goes. Now, we have a general rule when we have a machlokas between Rav Yossi and Rav Meir, or Rav Yossi and Rav Yehuda, we go like Rav Yossi. So Allah is usually like Rav Yossi. So here, Rav Yossi, what is he doing? He's cherry picking. He's taking the halacha of what establishes a Mued 3 days, right? Like Rav Yehuda. But when it comes to reverting back to becoming a tam, he goes like Rav Meir, that it doesn't, you know, 3 days with the animal gored, you know, like what's tshuva? What's real tshuva? Tshuva is when you committed a sin once, and then you had the opportunity after you did tshuva to do the same sin again, and you didn't do it. That's the real tshuva. The same thing with the tam. Yeah, if the tam gored 3 times, he's a mu'ay. Now, how does he revert back to becoming a tam again? If he had 3 more opportunities to gore on 3 different days and it didn't happen. That's what Rav Yehuda says. Rav Meir said, no, if he was playing with kids and he didn't gore them, that's good enough. And that's what Rav Yossi says. Rav Yossi goes like Rav Yehuda in the first case, that it becomes a mu'ay by testimony on 3 days, right? 3 days. But we're talking about, we'll see what the 3 days is. Is it 3 days of testimony or the animal gored on 3 different days, even if the testimony was on 1 day? We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. The first he says, again, like in our Mishnah, Shimon goes like Rav Meir, that if they testified about him 3 times, that he did 3 times, even on 1 day. So Rav Shimon says, he goes like Rav Meir when it comes to becoming a mu'ay 3 times. And what is the shloshi yamim? For going back. In other words, Rav Shimon's going like Rav Meir in the sense of how do you become a mu'ay? 3 times. You gored 3 times even on 1 day. How do you revert to becoming a tam? 3 different days. Amar Nachman Rav Abba Halacha Rav Yehuda b'mu'ay. The halacha is like Rav Yehuda. Why? Rav Yossi moed, because Rav Yossi is moed to him. Now, and we go like Rav Yossi. So therefore, halacha like Rav Yehuda comes to mu'ay that you need 3 days. But what are the 3 days again? Are the 3 days that he gored on 3 different days, or that the testimony was given on 3 different days? The halacha Rav Meir when it comes to tam, that what? That how do you revert to becoming a tam again? Just by kids playing with them and the animal doesn't gore them. Sure, Rav Yossi modelo. So why do you say lachas like Rav Yehuda, like lachas like Rav Yehuda when it comes to becoming a mu'ay, and like Rav Meir when it comes to reverting back, right? When it comes to reverting back, Nachman said the halacha is like Rav Yehuda mu'ay, And the halacha is like Rav Meir when it comes to reverting back to becoming a tam. So Lema Mar halacha Rav Meir b'muay. The halacha is like Rav Meir b'muay. Sure, Rav Shimon modelo. Halacha Rav Yehuda b'tam. Sure, Rav Shimon modelo. Why do you look at Rav Yosef? Look at what Rav Shimon says. I go like Rav Yosef because Rav Yosef has good reasoning. We always go like Rav Yosef. So it says he could have really said the halacha is like Rav Yosef. Like, why don't you say I hold like Rav Yosef? Say the halacha is usually like Rav Yosef because he prefers to say like Rav Yehuda and Rav Meir because Rav Yehuda and Rav Meir are the ones who are the authors that are mentioned in our mission. Okay, but the halacha is like Rav Yosef. So what does that mean? To becoming a mu'ay, 3 days. To reverting to becoming a tam, playing with children. Now here comes the question of the day. Shloshiyam diktani v'yuda Torah. Are we talking about that the animal gored on 3 different days? That we have to go, but the testimony can be on one day. Testimony come one day. 2 Adam come and say, we saw this animal gore on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Right? Is that obvious? Obi Gavra. Or you say, no. You have to have testimony, 3 different testimonies. In other words, are the 3 different testimonies that the animal gored on 3 different days, but the testimony can come on one day? Or are we talking about the man, meaning the owner of the animal, in the sense that you have to testify on 3 different days against this man? You can't come all in one day. I liken it to the case of getting a ticket here by camera in this country. You don't know about it until you get it in the mail. Then you say, wait a minute, I got this in the mail 6 weeks after the infraction, but I probably did the same thing several times in the interim. Why couldn't you warn me first? Did you ever have that feeling? Maybe I'm the only one who gets these tickets. But you understand? Like, yeah, you didn't know. I didn't know there was a no parking zone or that it was a bus lane or whatever it was, or, I didn't know that. Now you send me a ticket, but by the time I realized the problem, I could have already done it several times. So here, this is the idea that you say, what do you mean? That you can testify out to all the guy in one day? I didn't have any warning. I mean, you didn't tell me. I didn't know the animal gore. You're testifying. What do you say here? So, pardon? No, I know it's no excuse, but it's not fair. It's not fair because you didn't know it's a no park zone. You ever park at you stop for a second at Cecilic when you're at the mall over here, you didn't know that it's a no standing zone or something like that. Anyway, that's the question. That the animal has to have gored on 3 different days, but you can give testimony on one day. Or is it saying no? The man you have to testify against the owner on 3 different days. If 3 pairs of Adam could really be 1 pair of Adam testifying with all 3, but let's say it's 3 different sets of Adam testifying. You have A, B, and C, 3 sets of Adam coming to testify on one day. On one day, if you say, listen, they're testifying that the animal gored back last week on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but they're coming together now, that's okay, because you're trying to miyai the Torah. What you're saying is you're warning that the animal has gored on 3 different days. He had a gore on 3 different days, not like Rav Meir said. Rav Meir said 3 times, right? We're not saying that we hold like Rav Yehuda, that has to be on 3 different days, but is it 3 different days on testimony on the owner? You bring the owner to court, you have to testify in 3 different days, so he's properly warned. Or do you say no? It's going to, if it's coming, you can't, that's not miyud. He'll say, now you're testifying. I didn't know my animal gored 3 times. You're now giving testimony to me. You're calling me to court and telling me my animal gored last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Well, had you told me about Monday, I would have guarded my animal. But now you're testifying in one shot. Now you're testifying against me. So which one is it? Is it that the testimony can even be on one day, but it's 3 different days that the animal gored, or you have to give testimony on 3 days? Tashma. You have to testify. It doesn't become mu'ay. In other words, it doesn't happen automatically. He gored 3 times. How do you know he gored? You have to bring him to court. It's got to be, you have to tell the owner in front of a bezin. There's no testimony outside of court. Let's say he testified in bezin, but the owner wasn't there. Well, how was the owner supposed to know to guard his animal? You testified about this animal. There's Norm in the animal. You testified about him, but the owner doesn't know. The owner doesn't know. So how is he supposed to guard his animal? How can you hold him responsible for paying nezek sholem subsequently? You have to call him to court. That's the point. He has to come to court. If you testified in court and the owner wasn't there, or b'fnei ba'alim, or you testified in front of the owner, but wasn't in front of us, ain't nasamuy. It's not a mu'ed. I'd sheet above b'fnei bezin b'fnei ba'alim. Now, here's the case. Heidu Shnayim, let's say I said we have three sets of Adam, A, B, and C. Let's say A came along, the two Adam came along, they testified first. And then B testified. That it was about a second goring. And then then C testified about the third goring. There's three others. Now remember, the first or second and third time that they gored, all you could do is make him pay half out of the goof of the animal. But once you have three sets of Adam testing on about three different gorings, now you've got a mu'ed here on your hands, right? So you have Harekan shows there's three separated in terms of being mechayev for Chatzi Nezik, but for Azama, they're all testifying together. Because effectively you need three sets. It could be the same guys could have testified three times. But let's assume in this case, just to make it easy for the Azama, we're talking about that for Azama. What does Ma'azama mean? Proving that that witnesses are liars. If you say A, B, and C, if we're going to prove now that they're liars, what do you say there? Together, A, B, and C, which is six people, let's call that, right? Two, and two. That's one Adis for Azama because they're all testifying effectively together that he is a mu'ed. Because two alone doesn't do it, right? One gore, second gore, you need all three gorings to prove that he is a mu'ed. Nimsus now, let's say you find out that that set A Adam are liars, right? You said, Imano Ayisim, you guys couldn't have testified about this animal goring in New York on this day. You were with us in Boston on that day, at that time. All you have left is B and C. So the owner cannot be responsible for on the fourth time for paying full damages because you only have witnesses about two, right? Are they Chayiv Adam Zoman because they wanted to make him Chayiv? They're not, because Adam Zoman are not Zoman until you testify against all of them. So here, A, B, and C together constitute a group of six witnesses who together are making him a mu'ed. And if you only if you only prove that A is a liar and B is a liar, you haven't proven them all to be liars. So Nimtzas Kachni is let's say you find out that B is also liars. That's all you've left to C. Who Potter again? The owner would not be responsible to pay Nezek Sholem if the animal gored another time, a fourth time. We're not sure it's a fourth time. Maybe it's only the second time. Maybe A and B are liars. And there was no first and second time, I think. Let's say you find that they're all liars. A, B, and C are all liars. So what does this constitute? A conspiracy to turn Norman, the owner's ox, into a mu'ed that he have to pay Nezek Sholem. It's a conspiracy against them. Right? Nimtzas Kacha, it's a conspiracy against the owner and his animal. Nimtzas Kacha Lishis Amin, Kulin Chayav, and they all have to pay. This lashon is a little bit strange, but means that at least A, B, and C would have to pay. Each of them would have to pay Chatzi Nesek because that's what they wanted to be Machayev the owner, right? Because the first three times you pay Chatzi Nesek, so they would not. They would have to pay. They wanted to make the owner pay 50% of the damages. So in each case they'd have to reimburse the owner the 50%, but they're all zomin. Okay, now that's the case with the Adam. The case is simple with A, B, and C, but he could have all been the same guy also. He could have explained it that way too. But Torah, it works better to prove this case because you have three different sets of Adam. If we say again, what's our question? Does the three times, the 3 days that we're talking about mean that the animal gored on 3 different days, but the testimony can all come on one day? Then it makes sense. If you talk about the Torah, the ox has to be supposed to be born after damaging on 3 days. We go like a Yehuda that it's 3 days, but is it 3 days of goring or 3 days of testimony against the owner? Torah shopper. Okay, this makes sense. 3 sets of Adam came on one day. A said that he gored on Monday. B said he gored on Tuesday. And C said that he gored on Wednesday. And okay, if they turn out to be liars, so and so, fine. But if what? If we're talking about that the 3 sets of Adam are coming to what? To prove that the owner is wrong. In other words, you have to prove it in court on 3 different days. On let's call it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, they come to court on Wednesday, they come to court on Thursday, they come to court on Friday. If that's the case, that's what the 3 days mean. The animal could have gored we're not looking at that. We're not looking at that he gored on 3 days. We have to they have to come to court on 3 different days. So limro hanach kamoy. So the first two sets of Edom, A and B, can say how are you saying that we are Edom Zoman now, right? We're all proven to be Zoman, and we wanted to make this animal into a mu'ay. Why are we Edom Zoman? I didn't know that the other guys were going to come the other day. We came on Wednesday to testify, right? If they all come together, okay, fine. Then you can understand it. They all came together testifying about the animal goring on 3 different days. But if you say that we're talking about that you have to come to court on 3 different days to testify against the owner, so why can't the ones who came on Wednesday say, I didn't know that the guy's going to come on Thursday. The other guys are going to come on Thursday and Friday. Why are we one group of Edom? I didn't know that they're going to come.
But there's still Zoman
for Chatzi Nezek, yeah, but to turn them into a mu'ay, they wouldn't be. Right, that's the question. That's right, that's the question. Because if the animal, right, the question is, they're Edom Zom in the sense that if the animal gored a 4th time, they're trying to be Mechayiv from the Nezek Shalom for that. Eliyam, Liyurei Gavra, Limor Hanach Kamoy, let the other one say, we didn't know the other guys would have come. Elamai must be that when we say 3 days, it's talking about that the animal gored on 3 different days. But the testimony can come at one time, like this case indicate. Amar Vashi. So Vashi says, I said this before of kind of this learning that we just did. Varmalini said, and why is it even good here to be miyayed? Why is this even a good proof for being miyayed, proving that the ox is a goring animal by saying on one day we're coming to court and saying that he gored on 3 different days, A, B, and C consecutively on 3 different days. That A, B, and C came together to court, testified that the animals gored respectively on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Let the latter one say, how do we know that, we just came to court and testified about this 3rd case on Wednesday? Are we supposed to know that the other guys were coming on for Monday and Tuesday? Why do you say we're part of this conspiracy? Even if the Edom all came on the same day. And how do we know that everybody who showed up in court today, we're talking about this animal Norman with his owner? Everybody came to Bezin Lasuli Basra. We came ourselves. We had nothing to do with them. And we just came to Mechayev the owner, Chatzi Nezek, for this case on Wednesday. How are we supposed to know about Monday and Tuesday? So that also is no good. So how does it work at all? Even if you say we're not coming to be the owner on 3 different days. We're just trying to be the animal gored on 3 different days. What do we have to do with number 1 and number 2? We're not trying to prove anything. We're not trying to show that he's a mu'ed. Why would he have to be responsible for the 4th time for the Nezek Shalom? We were just coming for our own case. How do you know? The answer is the Kamarazma is you're right. It only works, and Tosfos points out that the Kasha is assuming that what about 1 and 2? The 1st and 2nd could also say we didn't know the other ones. Speaking about where the Wednesday guy, the set of C testified before the A and the B. So when A and B came along, they obviously came along after the Wednesday guy. So they certainly were intending to make him a mu'ed. They weren't just coming about the Chatzi Nezek. But the first guy who testified, the first set, which in this case is C, testified when they came along. They said we didn't know other guys were going to come along. So why doesn't it work too? The answer to Kamara's is you're right. It only works with all these 6 people if you could tell that they were huddling together outside in the hallway before they came before the judges, and they were planning this. They planned this conspiracy together. Rashi Omer Shabbat Ritzuf, they came together. They all walked in together. The same thing would be, you could argue, if it was only 2 Edom. It could be the same Edom who testified about the animal goring on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. It's the same 2 guys. You can't say that the Edom were just coming along to say Chatzi Nezek for 1 goring, because they didn't even know which animal it was. They just said, we know this guy's animal was goring. It was a lot of animals, and we know this guy's animal. He had his animals there, and one of them was goring. So why can't it be Chatzi Nezek? Chatzi Nezek is paid from the goof of the shore. They don't even know which shore it is. So there's no way to collect. So therefore, it's speaking about where you can know for sure that they were all coming to testify that he is a mu'ed. So you say, Elahechem Ya'ileh, how could be Ya'ileh if they don't even know which animal they're talking about? They say, you've got a goring animal. We don't know which was. You had a bunch. You brought in like 8 or 10 animals there, and we saw one of your animals gore this, right? And they all testified about the same idea. You every day you came in with your 5 dogs or your 10 animals, and you gored and gored. We don't know which animal it was, but we know it was one of yours. You have a big in your herd. You have a goring animal. You should have guarded them all. It's your fault. So they were mad at him. So in this case, in other words, this is just trying to prove. How do you know that the 6 Adam were coming to testify that he's a mu'ed? That he's a mu'ed. Now, again, if they came on 3 different days, so the first guys could say, we didn't know those guys were coming the next day. We didn't know, right? Elamai, we're not talking about proving, they don't have to come to court on 3 different days to prove that the owner should have known on 3 days, like I'm proving the case of the camera and the ticket. You should have let me know before you charge me for the second ticket. You should have made sure I was aware of the first ticket, right? Same thing here. We're not saying that. We're saying that what is a mu'ed? Proving that the animal gored on 3 different days. Like Rav Yehuda said, that She'ida Bo Shloshi Yomim, not that the testimony was on 3 days. Testimony could have been on 1 day, but testify that the animal gored on 3 different days. That constitutes a mu'ed. Okay. Against one man, yeah. Yeah. So, but they're saying we know you have an animal that gored. Now, so how does the animal? They don't know which one it is. They don't know which one. So that's a difficult case. So we're saying that they all came and said, we know you have an animal that gored. One of your animals is a goring animal, and you have to guard them all. That also constitutes. In other words, all of them now have a din of mu'ed because it's you're responsible for all your animals. Right. That's what he says. Yeah. You got to guard all your animals, and apparently then they would all be considered mu'ed. Let's say Rashi's case, it brings it with Levi. Levi incited Reuven's animal against Shimon, right? He incited the animal. You got him worked up, and then he damaged Shimon. Levi incited a dog. The dog was the big dogs, and he incited him against Shimon. So who's chayiv to pay over here? And he damaged Shimon. The insider is Vadi Potter because that's only grama. He didn't do anything directly. He was whistling at it, talking to it, screaming at it, did something to it. Grama Nazikin is Potter. Maybe chayiv dan shemayim. Baal kalamai. What about the owner of the dog? Is the dog responsible? Somebody incited the dog. Me and Madia say Motzi Amali can say, "I'm up there. What did I do? I wasn't even there. Yeah, I didn't do it." Since you know that your animal is easily incited, you shouldn't have left him unguarded. It's your fault. So the insider is definitely patur if he didn't do anything physical. He just talked or did something or blew into some sort of a machine or whatever. He did something, incited him. But is the owner of the dog responsible? The Tam, what is it? Tam Shiatanokas Mashmishimbo. And again, that's how we paskin, like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi who goes like a mayor. When does he become like a Tam? When children play with the dog or the animal, whatever, and he doesn't gore. Hanogeach, mashma that if he would gore when the children play with him, then you're chayiv. So it shows you that if the animal gored, even though he was incited or the children caused him to do it, you're chayiv. It doesn't say that you're chayiv. All I just say is the animal keeps goring children, he can't revert to becoming tam. He's still a mu'ed. But he's not chayiv for that. Maybe he's not chayiv because somebody incited it. And therefore, the owner is not responsible. So he can't prove the tashma. Let's say you incited a dog or a snake to do some damage. Patur. My love patur mishasa doesn't mean the inciter is patur because Ramzika is patur, but the owner of the dog maybe is chayiv. Maybe they're all patur. It's nobody's fault. I mean, it's the inciter's fault, but you can't be mechayiv him, and the owner is not at fault also. If you want to say. Let's say, though, we can't prove it from these cases, but he says, if you want to say, and the Rambam seems passing away, that if your animal is incited, and because he's incited, he does damage, the owner is chayiv to pay. If you say chayiv, shisu ba'atzma, but let's say the dog turned on the inciter, right? The inciter tried to incite the animal to go harm somebody else, and then he turned on him, which, what do they call that? Justice, Poetic justice, right? Shisohu ba'atzmo patur. He's still patur, meaning the owner of the dog would be patur. Even if you say the owner of the dog, when somebody incites it, Levi incited Reuven's dog against Shimon, maybe Reuven is chayiv because his dog is easily incited. But if the dog turned on Levi himself, who incited, he can't hold Reuven responsible. if you did something improper, like we said, if you left an obstacle in the Rishus Harabim, right? You left an obstacle which could cause harm, somebody could fall on it, hurt themselves, an animal, whatever, and then somebody came along and broke it, you shouldn't have left it there. It's your tough luck. If you did something improper, call did something improper, and somebody else came and did something improper to it, that's the same thing over here, that you were trying to incite the animal. Don't hold the owner responsible if the animal turned on you. Rish Lakish has a similar thing to what you said. He says simply what you say. We had this case the other day. Two animals in Rishus Harabim. One is lying down. Bachas is walking. You have no business having your animal lie down in Rishus Harabim. That's not a place for walking. It's not a place for lying down. So ubatam left the and the animal that was walking kicked the animal that was lying down. Patura, because the animal, even though you say he should be chayiv chatzin nezik, he damaged him, he kicked him. No, but the animal shouldn't have been lying there. The owner of the animal, the lying animal, shouldn't have left him there. So if you left him there, you're tough luck. You did something improper, and then something improper happened to it because of that. You're tough luck. Let's say the animal was lying down, kicked the other animal, then you're chayiv. That's nezik. That's Karen B'Shus Harabim. Amalei. So Rava said, in my case, when the incited animal turned on the inciter, there I say you put it because it's like you say poetic justice. You shouldn't have incited the animal. I know, but over here in the case of the animals on the street, one lying down, why not? I would even hold chayiv the one who kicked the other animal. I'm reading lay say my animal was lying down in the street, shouldn't be lying there. So if your animal came along and stepped on me and stepped on my animal, that I understand because I shouldn't have had my animal. But to kick me, you still have no business kicking him. So you have this difference that they don't agree in the case of the animal kicking, but in the case of the inciter, they would probably all agree that if the inciter incited a dog or a snake, or whatever, and then the incited animal turned on the inciter, the owner of the animal would not be responsible. Says the Mishnah, we've had this whole Mishnah we've already learned before. We had the Gemara Shor Mazik in Mishus of the Nizik is chayiv. Now, Kesad, Nagach, the animal gored. Nagach, if he pushed, Nashach, if he bit. Rabbis, if he lied on top. Bought, he kicked. Mishus Harabim, Sham Chatzin Nezik. Mishus Nizik, what about Mishus Nizik? Of course, Shane Barregel is only chayiv Mishus Nizik. But Karen is chayiv Mishus Harabim, and also is chayiv Mishus Nizik. Now, what is he chayiv Mishus Nizik? If he's a mazik, he's chayiv Chatzin Nezik as long as he's a tam, as long as he hasn't been proven after 3 gorings, right? The way we described it, the 3 gorings, even if the testimony was all in one day, but like the case of the ticket, right? That all in one day, but he had to be gored on 3 different days. He had to gore on 3 different days. So in Rishus Harabim is chayiv chatzin nezik. Rishus Nizik, what is he chayiv there? Rav Tafan Amar Nezik Shalom. We had this machlok before, but Chal Amar chatzin nezik. Come say you're chayiv chatzin nezik, Karen, no matter if Rishus Harabim or Rishus Yachid. Rav Tafan says I got a kal b'chomer, proving that in the chatzin nezik you should be paid nezik shalom. Well, you don't pay anything for Shane Bregel because the animal normally is entitled to walk from Rishus Harabim. If you eat some food, if you see some food in Rishus Harabim shouldn't be there, you can eat it. And if you left some stuff in Rishus Harabim, he's going to walk on it. Nothing wrong with that. You're putter Rishus Harabim. Shu putter. Hichmer lim Rishus Nizik, but Rishus Nizik you chayiv lishchan nezek shalem. So makom shehichmer lekem Rishus Harabim, where you chayiv Rishus Harabim for Karen Rishus Harabim sham chatzin nezek. And it didn't shnachim Rishus Harabim shushin b'chayiv nezek l'shan nezek shalem. So that's his kal b'chomer. Amalo dialogue minadin. It's enough to say that the inferred item that you're what are you inferring? That Karen b'shus hanizik should pay nezek shalem. No, you can't learn any more you can't learn to the inferred item anymore minadin from the justice that from the case that you're deriving from. In other words, you're deriving Karen b'shus hanizik from Karen b'shus Harabim. Well, B'Shus Harabim only chayiv chatzin nezik, so B'Shus Nizik also lias kadad. Not B'Shus Harabim chatzin nezik. It's enough for limited din lias kadad, like the thing that you were learning from, like the thing that you're deriving it from. You're deriving from chatzin nezik B'Shus Harabim. So chatzin nezik. So Karen B'Shus Nizik should also pay chatzin nezik. Ma B'Shus Harabim chatzin nezik. B'Shus Nizik chatzin nezik. Amalahem ani. Sometimes they got the gears ani afi, but it's so ani lo and Karen. I'm not going to learn Karen from Karen. Ani and Karen regel, but I'm going to learn from regel and Shane. Where you're makel, you don't pay anything for damage on Rishus Harabim, Shane Baregel. Hichmer b'Karen, you're machim by Karen because Karen you pay chatzin nezek. Rishus Harabim. Makom Sheich Moshe Regel, where you're machmir in Rishus HaNizik and Rishus HaNizik, and you pay Nezik Shalim for Shein and Regel, and it didn't Shenachim B'Keren, certainly Shmi Machim B'Keren, and you should also pay the full amount. Amalo again, but you're still basing it on Keren Rishus Harabim. Yes, you're right that part of the Kavachomer is Shein and regular pot Rishus Harabim, they're Chai Rishus HaNizik. So Keren, which is Chai Rishus Harabim, certainly should be Chai Rishus HaNizik, right? That makes sense. But how much should it be Chai? You want to jump from Chatzi Nezik Shalom? Again, the inferred item cannot be any more than the derived item. You're right. You can prove if Shein regular pot Rishus Harabim and Chai Rishus HaNizik. So Keren, which is Chai Rishus Harabim, certainly be Chai Rishus HaNizik. But how do you go from Chatzi Nezik Shalom? Because Shein regular is not Shalom. That doesn't prove anything. Shein regular may be Nezik Shalom wherever they're Chayav. You're only proving it based on the fact that Keren is more Chomer because it pays Rishus Harabim. Rishus Harabim only pays Chatzi Nezik, so you can't derive any more than that. And therefore, we have this machlokas. What is a Keren? What is Keren Chayav for? A Keren which is Tam. Of course, if the Keren is a Mu'ed, once his animal is a Mu'ed, he pays Nezik Shalom wherever. Just Rishus Harabim or Rishus Nezik. But a Keren Rishus Harabim, when he's a Tam, pays only Chatzi Nezik. What does he pay Rishus HaNizik? Does he pay Nezik Shalom like Rav Tarfon, or does he pay like the Rabban, like we Paskin? Only pays Chatzi Nezik because the Kal V'chomer doesn't work over here because the Kal V'chomer says that he should be Chayav there, but that he should be Chayav Nezik Shalom. No, you're only learning it from Keren. Keren Rishus Harabim is only Chatzi Nezik. Rishus HaNizik is also Chatzi Nezik. The Gemara is going to explain tomorrow that Rav Tarfon should also hold of Dayo. But he only holds of Dayo when the whole Kavachomer wouldn't fall. Here, the whole Kavachomer wouldn't make any sense if you say Dayo. So therefore, he holds that you can even jump this way too. We'll discuss Dayo tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. We'll pick it up from here. Have a good day, everybody. Shavua Tov. Yeah, you could say that's logical. You could say it's logical. It should be more or not. Maybe the rule of Keren is that you pay no matter where you are. And Chatzi Nezik, since he's a Tom, he only pays Chatzi Nezik. Because again, your animal is not expected to do the damage. The Shein V'Regel, you're expecting the animal to do damage. Keren, the animal acted, out of the ordinary. So maybe you should only still pay Chatzi Nezik. You can see the logic both ways.